Hello again everyone and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always thank you so much for being here. A sensitive topic, so be warned. People who have met psychopaths before. What was the giveaway? That they were psycho. Serious. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I worked 20 years in residential with kids and teenagers, so I had hundreds of clients. I would say only one came through who was a psychopath, born that way. 10 years old, charming, good-looking, smart kid. If you met him, you'd think he's a nice kid. So why was he with us? He put his infant half-sister in a freezer and refused to say where he hid her. She was found quickly and was okay, but he sat there calmly as his father and stepmother tore around the house, frantically looking for the baby. This kid was never abused, neglected, or had any learning or developmental disabilities. His parents' divorce wasn't contentious. They were cooperating well. He would have scored very low on the ACE's scale. He had no remorse about what he had done, other than that it had landed him in residential. While he was with us, he groomed and essayed his roommate, terrorized him by convincing him he would kill his sister and mother if he told anyone about the abuse. Again, when asked why, it was because he could, not because he necessarily had a sexual urge. It was more about control and power. He enjoyed the game, so to speak. I watched the news for his name, afraid that it will pop up as a prolific serial killer after he finally gets caught. But he is also afraid that he may never get caught. He may have just gotten very smart and is just out there ruining lives in subtle ways. My brother is a diagnosed psychopath, and it's not something that you can spot. Basically, psychopaths can best be summed up as having a complete lack of empathy. They see the world like they're the main character and everyone else is just an NPC. And one of the hardest things about growing up with my brother was that while he was a literal effing monster who wouldn't think twice about destroying your life for the slightest hint of personal gain, he was a master manipulator. I could write 100,000 words here and tell you everything he's done, but if you actually met him, within 20 minutes you'd think he was a great guy, salt of the earth, generous, giving, funny, charming, and that I was full of shit. But if my brother is being nice to you, it means he wants something from you, even if that thing is just the ego boost of making you like him. Then he'd eventually get bored and not get his own way, and mask would slip, and you'd get a glimpse of the real him. He can make friends really easily, but he's never been able to keep a friend because sooner or later, the disguise drops. I don't talk about my brother anymore, because when I do, I look like a crazy person. People see this great guy, and any attempt to warn them or tell people who he really is makes me look like a jealous, bitter weirdo with an axe to grind. My ex-sister-in-law didn't speak to me for over a year because I tried to warn her when he proposed. She thought I was the worst person in the world for trying to poison her against him for no reason. But 1 year, 1 divorce, and 1 restraining order later, she said not listening was the biggest mistake of her life, and now she has the same problem where a lot of her friends can't understand why she divorced such a great guy. I used to be a criminal lawyer and met and interviewed many very serious criminals, including murderers. One client always stood out to me for a very specific reason. While his crime was not as serious as some of my clients, it was a minor assault on a stranger on a train. What was chilling was that he made no attempt to justify his actions. Even after lots of prompting, even the murderers would say why they did it, or why they assaulted somebody badly enough to kill them. They usually denied the intention to kill. Even a very poor and morally defunct excuse, "they were staring at me," was something I could write down and acknowledge as an actual casual event. This client could not give a single explanation on his behavior, which seemed to me the closest indication of psychopathy I came across, and quite distinct from bad or evil. This man was not that bad. As he lacked the empathy to even understand that, I, as another human, wanted to comprehend the basis for his agency. I was in jail with a guy who was in for murder. He had cancer, so his attitude was very much, I don't give an F. He was prepared to die in prison. Anyway, I asked him, and he told me he'd killed 3 people. He said he knew it was his calling to kill people because it gave him the most euphoric feeling in the world when he took a life. A high better than any high you can imagine, he would say. He licked his lips while we talked about it sometimes. It got kind of weird. I knew a guy early in my work career who genuinely enjoyed manipulating people. He lived to embarrass people too. Almost everyone hated him except for those who thought he lived the punk lifestyle, where you pay no attention to what society expects of you and live life on your own terms. Unfortunately, he was very good at his job, so he wasn't fired until they discovered he was stealing from the company. From my experience, they have no problem using people. My experience is limited to 2 people. The first one was very willing to spread lies or backstab to get ahead. He would also freak out if things didn't go his way. Getting along with him was like learning his rules. If you broke them, he would fly off the handle at you. He had the warmest smile and the friendliest demeanor. He once let slip that the only reason he hadn't committed murder was because he would not do well in prison. I was never able to physically be around him after I clocked him for what he was. It was like my entire body was rejecting his mere presence, obviously exaggerating that one a bit. The second was a girl who I only found out about after I broke up with her. She was a hair's breadth away from ruining my life. I won't go into details, but she spent a few months in jail for false accusations and spent time in a mental hospital for self-harm. Someone recording her harming herself is the reason I'm not serving time for domestic violence I did not do. Yeah, I mean, this is just a laundry list of people with bad traits, and maybe some of it's fixable, and maybe some of it just isn't, and sounds like a woman like this is. I played a lot of volleyball in college. Post-college, I wanted to keep playing for fun, and I had moved to a new city. About 2 weeks in, I met someone who was very good, but also a little too intense for community gym volleyball. The following week, someone new to the sport missed a pass. He proceeded to get very angry, curse out the new player, and get escorted out of the gym with a particular look in his eye. The following week, he murdered his wife and kids, then killed himself. Brother is a psychopath. Giveaway was when he went to prison for attempted murder, then got out and immediately handed me a sawed-off shotgun wrapped in duct tape at night. I didn't know what it was at first. He commented that the duct tape makes it so that it doesn't absorb fingerprints. That's when I realized he handed it to me on purpose, to get more fingerprints on it so he'd have a plausible deniability if he was ever caught using it for a criminal activity. There's honestly a lot more than this. He'd brag about becoming friends with people, then finding out where the deeds and title registrations were for their cars, etc., and stealing the cars and selling them, etc. And the time he laughed about tying someone to a chair and beating the shit out of them because they pissed him off. And the fact that all he does is lie, and that he's amazing at getting strangers to trust or love him. He's an amazing manipulator. And the time he stole $6,000 from me on my credit card. He's still my brother, and I love him for some weird reason, but yeah, not a good guy. I met a guy at work. We talked for a couple hours. The whole time I got this vibe like his demeanor was so calm but in a creepy way. It's almost as if there's nothing you could say to the man that would evoke any expression. Another coworker came in and knew him from years ago on another job. It turns out he spent 10 years in prison for hiring a hitman to kill his mother. My mom dated bikers when I was a kid. I spent a lot of time around a lot of bikers. There was only one dude that I would have called a psychopath. I remember a friend of his trying to steal his motorcycle while he was out of town. His friend dropped it and couldn't pick it back up, so he left it there. The only reason he found out about it was because of the neighbors who saw it. I knew the guy, and kept the bike safe for him until he got back. My mom and I were crashing at his place at the time. I think I was maybe 15 years old. So he gets back into town and calls his friend to come over as if nothing had happened. Dude shows up, and they're chit-chatting like normal, and he brings up that someone tried to steal his bike while he was out of town. His friend was putting on a good act. Holy shit, that's effed up. Or something like that. Then completely out of nowhere, with no warning, no expression, bam! Dude's face explodes with a big-ass wrench. There wasn't a single bit of emotion on his face as he pummeled the guy with the wrench until his face was a mangled, bloody mess. He was splattered with blood, dropped the wrench, and casually grabbed him by the foot and drug him into the alley like he was just taking out the trash. Came back, wiped the blood off his face, and went back to working, fixing his bike like nothing had happened. There was no anger, no shaking with rage, and he was calm as a cucumber. It was all just so effing mechanical, and it happened so fast. There was absolutely no hesitation, just bam, 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 squish, 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 squish. As far as the giveaway that he was a psychopath, there wasn't one. He was really, really good at faking emotion, but much like the uncanny valley, you just always had a bad feeling around him, but couldn't quite pinpoint why. I mean, he was super charming, smart, etc. As far as I'm concerned, it was confirmed by the above experience. I used to be a CO in a maximum security prison. I was working in the restricted housing unit one day on overtime when I met Joshua Andrew Koman-Sarjevsky. If you don't know who he is, watch The Cheshire Murders on HBO. The dude's eyes were black, soulless. This is the first time I've seen something like that. I heard it described, but this is my first time meeting or seeing it in person. I got a real uneasy feeling about that. I heard it described, but, I saw him for the first time. I didn't know who he was until one of my coworkers at the time told me about him and told me to check the documentary out. I've worked on death row a lot and worked with multiple mass murderers and serial killers, but Koman-Sarjevsky was the only one who truly made me feel uneasy. Had the classic traits of being manipulative, user-friendly, charming, reckless, focused on instant gratification without the ability to delay gratification, and casually cruel for fun. The first thing that he did to tip me off was he was different. Back when he was still being kind of nice, was I pointed out an Altoids box I had painted and decoupaged, and told him it was my favorite thing I had made. The very next day, he ripped the lid off by twisting its hinges and used it as a tray to dump resin out of his pipe that he was ripped off and liquefying by rinsing the pipe with rubbing alcohol, dissolving and destroying the paint. I asked why he did it, and with no emotion he said because it was there. And I asked why he couldn't get a dish or a saucer from the kitchen or any other kind of container, and he had no answer. He just sat there looking very strange, blank and wide-eyed. These days, he is in and out of jail and prison and has completely destroyed his life and health. It was kind of a bizarre occurrence, and to cut a very long story short, we were working at a startup company in China, and my boss and I both read the psychopath test by John Ronson. One day we talked about it, and it occurred to us that one of our business partners from the US checked every box. She came in as a consultant. We knew her socially before, and on one of her first days in the company, she confided to me that she would need help reading the emotions of our employees because she wasn't able to. At the same time, I met one of her employees in her own company, and he told me how much of a terrible boss she was. She got shit done, so we went along with her, but the whole situation escalated later when she claimed that she had an affair with my boss and went batshit crazy. It was a real relief when we cut her out of our lives. Long ago, my friends and I worked at a gas station. One of my customers was a strange old woman. Whenever you looked at her, you could just feel like something was wrong with her, like a strange static noise played in your head when you saw her, because you couldn't sense any humanity in her or whatever. She just seemed wrong. Then I noticed that it seemed to get worse if any women were around her. She would unnaturally twitch whenever she saw a woman anywhere near her, but I'm a man, and I didn't want to deal with her, so I just ignored it. Anyway, one of my friends was working one day, and a female friend of ours was hanging out with them. Apparently, she came in to get cigarettes or gas or something, and then she noticed our female friend. She started twitching like usual, and then she just lost it and smacked the shit out of our friend out of nowhere, then acted like nothing had happened and walked away with their cigarettes. I had known this person for a long time before reconnecting. They had become the executors of their father's estate. She was cheating everyone. She would laugh when she talked about it. I really didn't understand what she had done, but it had the signs of being nefarious. I do know she stole $300,000 from her children and laughed about it, let them sue me. She also showed me how easy it was to hack into people's Facebook accounts. I didn't understand or want to. She told me about this guy she had loved forever. She was married with 3 kids. She chased him all over the internet for more than 10 years, bragging about all of his made me scared of what she might do to me. She did the stupidest thing and bragged about them. One evening, my daughter said, "It shows you were on Facebook," and I was not. The person in question was talking to that guy she stalked. I closed my account. She lied constantly about anything. The thing is, she constantly bragged about her being nefarious, illegal antics. There was so much more. The last straw was when she saw a neighbor at the theater. She said to me, "I'm going to lie to this guy. Just go along with it." I replied, "Meet you in the car." Last year, she hacked my phone. She had also bragged about hacking. I'm still wary of her. I do not communicate with her.